All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the world of the Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah. I mean, this is a guy whose name is basically synonymous with just unimaginable wealth and absolute unquestionable power.
So to really wrap our heads around this story, let's just start with a few numbers. First up, 7,000. Just keep that number in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to it for sure.
Okay, next up, $30 billion. And get this, that's the conservative estimate of his net worth. The real number, it's probably way, way higher.
And for our last number, 1,788. What's that? Oh, just the number of rooms in his personal palace. You know, these numbers, they start to paint a picture, right? But believe me, the story behind them is even crazier.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the most obvious part of the Sultan's life. The sheer, just mind-boggling scale of his luxury. And it's all paid for by his country's massive natural wealth.
So remember that number I told you to hang on to, 7,000? Well, here it is. That's how many cars are in his personal collection. It's valued at something like $5 billion. We're talking over 600 Rolls-Royces alone. And the real showstopper? A custom Rolls-Royce that's plated head to toe in 24-karat gold. Just incredible.
And, you know, his taste for the extravagant doesn't stop on the ground. Oh no. When it comes to the sky, the Sultan doesn't just have a few private jets. His main ride is basically a flying palace. It's this giant symbol of wealth that literally follows him around the globe.
I mean, the level of opulence here is just nuts. He bought a whole Boeing 747 and then dropped another $120 million just to customize the inside. We're talking crystal chandeliers, solid gold wash basins, the works. And that's just one of his 17 planes. He even gave his daughter her own private Airbus for her birthday. As you do.
This spending habit, it extends to everything, even personal stuff. For example, he apparently flies his favorite barber all the way from London to Brunei. That trip costs more than $20,000, just for one haircut. Let that sink in.
So, you've got to be asking, right? Where does all this money, this seemingly bottomless pit of cash, come from? And how is it so tied up with the fact that he has total, absolute power over the entire country?
Well, the answer's actually pretty simple. Oil and gas. Brunei's economy is almost completely dependent on it. It's something like 90% of their GDP. And that money flows directly to the state and, you guessed it, right into the Sultan's massive personal fortune.
All that oil money built this, the Istana Nurul Iman, which means Palace of the Light of Faith. And just to give you some scale here, it is 3 times bigger than the Palace of Versailles. It cost about $1.4 billion to build back in 1984.
The sheer size is just, it's hard to even comprehend. We're talking nearly 1,800 rooms, 257 bathrooms, but it's the other stuff that gets you. Like, it has air-conditioned stables for 200 of his polo ponies. And that famous dome? Yep, it's covered in 22-karat gold.
But here's the thing, this place isn't just a house. It's so much more. It's the absolute center of power in Brunei. It's the Prime Minister's office, it's the government headquarters, it's where the Sultan runs the entire country from. And when I say he rules, I mean he rules, in the most literal way possible. He's not just the king, he's also the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and the Home Minister. And then, in 2004, a constitutional amendment basically made him infallible. What does that mean? It means he can't be charged with a crime, he can't be sued. He is, quite literally, above the law.
So when you mix that kind of insane wealth with that kind of absolute power, it really makes you wonder, right? What is life actually like for the 500,000 people who live in Brunei? And that brings us to the core contradiction of Brunei. It's this paradox. On one hand, the country is incredibly generous to its citizens. But on the other hand, it expects something huge in return. Total, unquestioning obedience to the Sultan's way of doing things.
You really see this contradiction play out in everyday life. For citizens, you get some amazing benefits, right? We're talking free education all the way through university, totally free healthcare, and you pay 0 income tax. But the flip side is you live under a very strict interpretation of Islamic Sharia law.
And this became a huge global story in 2019. That's when the Sultan brought in the final parts of a new legal code based on Sharia law. And, well, the international reaction was not good. It drew a ton of criticism from all over the world, and fast. These new laws brought in some incredibly severe punishments for certain crimes. Things like amputation for theft, and even stoning to death for adultery and for same-sex acts. This sparked this huge global outrage. You saw protests pop up outside the fancy hotels the Sultan owns, like the Dorchester in London and the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Now, for all the effort that goes into projecting this image of perfect stability and total control, the Sultan's long time on the throne hasn't exactly been smooth sailing. There have been some pretty big controversies and some very public family scandals.
Yeah, over the years, a few major scandals have really shaken the royal family. Probably the most famous one was the whole Amadeo crisis, where the Sultan's own brother, Prince Geoffrey, was accused of basically stealing billions of dollars from the state. And then there was that lawsuit back in 1997, filed by a former Miss USA who claimed she was basically held prisoner.
That lawsuit, by the way, ended up getting dismissed, but not because of the facts of the case. Nope, the court basically said it couldn't proceed because of something called sovereign immunity. It's a legal rule that says you can't prosecute a ruling head of state. It's a really powerful reminder of just how protected he is, not just at home, but on the world stage.
But, to give you the full picture, Brunei is a really interesting place with some fascinating details. For one, its full name translates to Abode of Peace. It also has one of the highest literacy rates in the world, almost 98%. And here's a cool one. Back in 2013, it became the very first country in Asia to completely ban shark finning.
So, at the end of the day, we're left with this big question. A question that really defines what modern Brunei is all about. Is it a golden paradise, this abode of peace that gives its people stability and a good life as long as they follow the rules? Or is it more of a gilded cage, a beautiful prison built on the foundation of absolute, unquestionable power?